This tutorial will teach you about installing and using a local web server using XAMPP. XAMPP is an all-in-one installer that makes it easy for you to set up your own web server on your own computer. And this is important because it will allow you to test your work in class or build your own websites in a safe testing environment. It's only available for you. It can't be seen by the outside world. There's many ways to do this. You could set up your own PHP, MySQL, and Apache software and maintain it all, but that's a big hassle. XAMPP is a product that's a one-click installer that allows us to do everything together. It allows us to install and set this up on our computer with not much hassle. This video is broken into two parts. Part 1 will teach you about installing the XAMPP server on a Windows 10 computer. If you're using another version of Windows or Mac, still follow along because the steps are very similar. Part 2 will teach you how to use the server and how to view files you might have created in class or on your own in a web browser using XAMPP. When installing XAMPP, the first step is to open a web browser of your choice. It could be Firefox, Chrome, or Internet Explorer, Safari, or something else, and visit the website www.apachefriends.org. This is the official website of XAMPP and the only place I would go to get XAMPP. That way we know that it's secure and safe. When you get to this website, you'll see that they offer 3 separate versions. XAMPP for Windows, which gives us a WAMP server, XAMPP for Linux, which gives us a LAMP server, and XAMPP for OS X, or Mac computers, which gives us a MAMP server. To download XAMPP, I'll go to the top of the screen and click on the download link. Once I've done this, I can see different operating system installs: XAMPP for Windows, XAMPP for Linux, and XAMPP for OS X. Find the one that matches your operating system. In my case, I'm a Windows machine. And then you want to make sure you download the newest version of PHP 7. So at the time of recording this video, the current version is PHP 7.0.9. So yours should either say 7.0.9 or something higher than that. Once you've found that, hit download. Okay, so now I've downloaded XAMPP to my computer. I can see it here in my downloads folder. XAMPP Win, which means Windows, 7.0.9, which means PHP 7. So that's exactly the version I want. So it's been downloaded, but now I have to install it. So to install it, I'll just double click on that program in my downloads directory. If you're on a Mac, this process may be a little bit different. So on my Windows computer, I get a note saying it seems you have an antivirus running. In some cases, this may slow down or interfere the installation of the software. Please visit the following link to learn more. On Windows, the old wisdom is that anytime you install software, you're supposed to turn your antivirus software off. I'm not going to do that on mine. I've installed XAMPP plenty of times and I've never had it interfere, but it's up to you if you wish to do that. And if you do, you just turn your software off and say yes, otherwise I'm just going to hit yes. All right, the next window I get says important. Because of an activated user access control UAC on your system, some functions of XAMPP are possibly restricted. With UAC, please avoid to install XAMPP to C program files or deactivate UAC. So UAC is a tool that was put in, I believe, in Windows 7. It just allows users to be more secure. So I'm going to say okay because I know what this is. If you didn't set up your own computer or you're not sure about your UAC permissions, you might want to look this up online just to make sure this isn't going to affect it. But by default, you should be fine with the standard install. So after clicking OK, I see a very simple Windows setup. This is like any other piece of software that I'd go and install. So I see welcome to the XAMPP setup wizard, and I'll hit next. That's my only option. On this screen, I can decide the components I want to install. Now, if you want to install everything, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that. The only thing is it takes a little bit more hard drive space. So for me, I want to optimize my hard drive space. I want to make sure that I'm not installing things I don't need. So I'm going to uninstall Mercury Mail Server, Tomcat, FileZilla FTP Server, Perl, Webalizer, and Fake Send Mail. So the ones I want to have checked are Apache, MySQL, PHP, which I can't uncheck, and PHPMyAdmin. Those are the ones I want to have definitely installed. Anything else is up to you. It's not going to take that much hard drive space if you just want to install everything, and it gives you a more robust environment. So after that, I'll hit Next. Now it asks me where I want to install this to. By default, you install it to XAMPP, and that'd be my recommendation for you is just install it to XAMPP. That way everything's nice and easy. The next screen here that we see is going to ask us about Bitnami, and Bitnami is the commercial company behind XAMPP. So I don't want to learn anything more about it, so I'll uncheck that box and hit Next. And then it says Setup's now ready to begin installing XAMPP on your computer. Hit Next, and it will start installing this. I won't make you watch it install. You'll see it on your computer, but I'll check back with you once mine's been installed. Okay, my XAMPP installation has been finished. I can come to my C drive now, and I can see a folder called XAMPP. And if I open that folder, I see a whole bunch of folders inside of it and a whole bunch of other files here. Don't worry too much about what these mean or what they are. You're not going to need to worry about these. But as long as this folder is populated, it means you've installed XAMPP correctly. The next part of this video is going to show us how we can use XAMPP to view our websites and our web pages. With XAMPP now correctly installed on my computer, I can now use it as a web server to look at my web pages and websites. Inside your XAMPP folder, in my case XAMPP, I'm going to scroll through here and I have my files alphabetically, so it'll be near the bottom. I need to find this thing called XAMPP-control.exe. If you're on a Mac, the name will be the same, but without the .exe on it. This is something you're going to have to use every time you want to use your web server, so making a shortcut to this in your desktop might be a good idea, so it's quick to open. And I'll just double click on that to open it. Okay, so this is the XAMPP control panel. You may have a different version number here, depending on when you've downloaded this based on when this video is recorded. But you'll see that this allows me to turn on or off any service. So in my case, I have Apache, MySQL, and FileZilla installed so I can start and stop them. I can't do that with Mercury or Tomcat because I didn't install those two services when I did my XAMPP install. You also see there's buttons for configuration of these, so if I need to make configuration changes, I can easily do that from the config button. But we won't worry about that for right now. In your first semester of web communications, all you're going to need is just Apache. In semesters 2, 3, and 4 of new media, you're going to need MySQL as well. So for today, let's just turn on Apache. So here where I see the Apache module, just click on the Start button. If this is your first time running this on Windows, you may get a notification about allowing this to access the firewall or access through the firewall. If you do see that, you can say OK, because that just says that this can connect to and act like it's on the internet. Now you see that Apache's gone green, so I know it's turned on. Don't worry about these check marks next to services. If you know enough about Windows and you want to start this as service, you can select that. But I wouldn't do this unless you know what a Windows service is and how to manage them. Now that I have a green background here, that means Apache's turned on and my web server is ready to go. So I've minimized my control panel. Don't close it, but you can minimize it or drag it off screen or whatever you want to do so you can keep working. I'll show you how to get your files into XAMPP so you can view them in a web browser. So here on my computer in the XAMPP folder, I see this folder called htdocs. And on a Mac, you'll see the same thing. Inside of your XAMPP install, which is generally in the applications directory, you'll see an htdocs folder. htdocs stands for hypertext documents. These are the files that we're going to put onto our web server so we can view them in a web browser as though they were a web page. If I just open up that folder, you'll see there's already things inside there. That's okay. These just come with XAMPP as a test to make sure that this all works. So if I wanted to view any files inside of this htdocs folder, I can do that in a web browser. And I do it just like I would visiting any other web page. If I open up my web browser of choice, in this case Firefox, generally at the top there will be an address bar. So here I'm at the website www.apachefriends.org. And we know that in our web browser we could type in whatever website we want to go to. SAIT.ca, apachefriends.org, google.com. Our XAMPP server has its own address as well. So if I just type in localhost and hit enter, localhost is the name of our XAMPP server. We don't need a .com or a .ca, just localhost. And when you do that, it will show you whatever the default file, the index.html file, is inside of that directory. So in this case, it's showing us everything inside this folder because that's the way things were set up. So if I just go to localhost, you should see a page similar to this. It might not be exactly the same, but this page will tell you that XAMPP is running, which is exactly what we want. So I could open any file inside of this folder simply by knowing its file name and typing that into the web browser. So for example, if I wanted to open up this file here called apache-pb.png, I could just go to my web browser and I could type in localhost because I know it's in the htdocs folder and then its relative URL. So apache_pb.png, and there's that image. So you can open HTML files, CSS files, PHP, images, anything that will open in a web browser. I don't suggest that you actually put your files directly into this folder when you're working for class. I suggest that you create subfolders. Subfolders help you keep everything organized and neat. Okay, so inside of that htdocs folder now, I've created a subfolder, a place where I'm going to put work for my web communications class. And in my case, I named it Web Communications, all as one word and all lowercase. You'll find out in a minute here why we named it that, because we have to follow web standard naming conventions. So inside this folder, I have the file that I'm going to want to view on my web page. In this case, it's called calculator.php. If there's other files I needed, if I need an image file or if I needed a CSS file or anything else that would go along with that, those would have to go in here as well. But for right now, I'm just going to have this file called calculator.php. And before we go on, I'll let you know a little bit about web naming and how we name files for the web. When you save a file on your computer, you can name it almost anything you want to. But when you're putting a file on the web, or in our case on a web server, even if it's local, we have to follow certain naming rules. There's certain rules for files to show up and work properly on the web. The first rule that you're going to have to remember is to use all lowercase letters. Sometimes we like to use uppercase letters. Sometimes we like to make proper names uppercase. Don't use those. Try to make all of your names all lowercase. Your files may contain numbers. If you want to call something week 3 with a 3 as a number, you can do that. So they may contain numbers and they may just be numbers. If you want to create a folder called 1, that's fine. Avoid using special characters. So anything where you hit shift and then press the numbers or any other special character, avoid using those. Sometimes they'll work on some operating systems, but as a general habit to get into, avoid using special characters. There's 2 exceptions though that we'll talk about in just a second. Spaces are not allowed. So when you're naming something, don't use a space. Don't call it like Dan space Stevenson. You would have to use everything as one word. So Dan Stevenson is one word. Or you can use a hyphen or an underscore instead. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. It's up to you and your own personal preferences. If you want to use a hyphen, an underscore, or just make things all one word. But if you can remember these rules when you're naming files today and going forward for use on the internet or on a web server, you'll save yourself a lot of hassles. And also try to make sure that you keep your file names descriptive and as short as possible. You want to be able to find that file later and have its name have some relevance. So calling it page1.php isn't helpful, but calling it aboutus.php is. And keeping it as short as possible helps you with older web servers that may only allow 128 characters for the total URL size. Now that we know how to name files for the web, and we've made sure that all the files we might want to use on our website or our web page are named that way, and you'll see that the ones already here do follow that naming convention, we can now view these in a web browser. So in my case, I want to visit this web communications folder. So the path to this is the same as the path it is here. Whatever is after the htdocs simply goes into the web browser after the local host. Let me show you what I mean. So in my web browser now, I'll type localhost, which is how I reference my web server, then that folder I want to go to, which is web communications, then the name of that file, which was calculator.php. And if I hit enter, I see that the calculator that I wanted shows up correctly. It's pulling this file right from my htdocs folder and showing it in the web browser and processing the PHP and other things that I might need. So you can use any folder structure you want to and any names of files you want to. Just make sure that you're always using the name of the folder and then a slash and then the name of the file and its extension .php, .html, .jpg, whatever it is. You could even have subfolders if you wanted to. If you take a look at my personal server here, you'll see that I have a webcom folder, and inside it I have 3 folders, one for first semester, one for second semester, and one for third semester. And inside of those, I have more folders, one for each week of class. And inside that, I may have more folders. So I can run any of these files. I just have to remember this file structure. So for example, if I wanted to run this file called index.php inside of my week 3 -variables folder, which is inside of my first semester folder, which is inside of my webcom folder, all I would need to do is go to a web browser and type this, localhost, because that substitutes for my htdocs directory, then the name of the folder I created, in this case it's webcom, then 1, which is the folder under that, then week 3 -variables, which is the folder under that, then bio, which is the folder under that, then the name of the file I want to access. Then if I hit enter, I would see that web page show up here in my web browser. If I ever want to change this web page, all I do is edit that page that's in my htdocs folder, save it back to there, and refresh this page. And it would show a new version of this same content. That concludes our tutorial for setting up your own local XAMPP server. Remember, this server cannot be used on the actual internet the way we've set it up. It's only for your computer, or if you know what you're doing, you could get to it from your own local network, from any computer on the network. Hopefully this will help you to be able to work on your NMPD and webcom files, homework, and assignments from your own computer. If you have any questions or need any help with this, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Let's make sure you get it set up right and you can do what you need to do in class.